Trying to predict the future of business, everyone has a different answer. Bull market, bear market, rates up, rates down. If only we could fast forward and see what's coming. Luckily, over 43,000 businesses have future-proofed their growth using NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 AI cloud ERP that brings together accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR all under one roof. NetSuite is your unified source of insight, giving you visibility and actionable data to make quick decisions. With real-time forecasting, it turns uncertainty into clarity you can act on. And when you're closing the books in days, not weeks, you're looking backwards less and focusing more on what's next. If I were running a business with a lot of moving parts, NetSuite is exactly what I would use. Whether you're earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to challenges fast and seize big opportunities. Speaking of opportunity, download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning for free at netsuite.com/SPI. That's netsuite.com/SPI. netsuite.com/SPI.
1 in 5 Americans over the age of 65 are working, and not because they need the money. It's because they missed the contribution and they missed the connection. And so I want to help people realize that there's a likelihood they're going to work longer than what society is telling them. And I don't think people realize the financial flexibility they would have by planning to work longer. Let's say Tony's 45 years old. Tony makes $150,000 a year, and he has $150,000 saved up for retirement. He meets with his advisor. They agree 65 is the age for him to retire. And then the advisor tells him that he has to save $2,400 a month for the next 20 years in order to stop working. And that is a non-starter for most people. So he calls the financial advisor back and he says, let's make my retirement age 75 instead of 65. And the advisor tells him now, instead of having to save $2,400 a month, he only has to save $110 a month. It goes down by 96%. So I am advocating more quality time with your kids, with your spouse, with your friends, more personal care, more fun. But what I'm doing is I'm showing people the numbers. Maybe there's a little bit more time and money than they previously thought they had.
Once you enter the workforce when you were 18, maybe even younger than that, maybe a little bit older, you think about this idea of retirement. We're already thinking about our future, it's great to think about the future. It's great to plan for the future. It's great to save and invest for the future. Or is it? It's weird to think about not thinking about retirement because we hear all the time about people who didn't save for retirement or they're behind on their retirement. They have to catch up on their retirement. Now, one of the benefits of starting a business on the side or even going full-time with it is you have a lot more opportunity to have a higher ceiling, to catch up, to start adding more funds to your retirement account, all those kinds of things, 401k, Roth IRAs, etc. However, what about the idea of getting rid of retirement altogether? Retiring retirement. I first heard about this from Derek Coburn, who wrote a book called Let's Retire Retirement, How to Enjoy Life to the Fullest, Now and Later. And not too far into this interview, I started to understand. It really clicked, and it got me really excited. Now, this doesn't mean you should spend all of your money now, but it does mean some things that you can do now to start enjoying life today versus waiting until you are 65. And there's a lot of great points that Derek makes in this episode. And just a quick note before we get started, the information, opinions, and recommendations in this particular episode are for general information only. This episode should not be considered professional financial advice. Thank you for letting me say that. And now on to the interview. This is Derek Coburn. You can find him at derekcoburn.com. Here he is. Derek, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for the time today.
Pat, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited because we're going to chat about a topic that I know has been on a lot of people's minds for so long, and it's this idea of retirement, but you're taking an approach that's very different, especially coming from you being a financial advisor. You're basically saying, let's retire retirement. Why has this become your passion and the message that you're driving home today?
Yeah. So, shortly after I began my career as a financial advisor 27 plus years ago, I immediately began to question the validity of this idea. I saw people that were making sacrifices to their health, their happiness, their key relationships in the name of saving up a certain amount of money by a certain age so they could stop working and then enjoy those things. And I was simultaneously seeing people who were retiring and arriving at this place and seeing that it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. It wasn't filled with all of the moments and experiences that they thought they were going to have. They didn't have the health to enjoy the activities they were hoping to do. They didn't have the relationships in place that they were hoping to have. And I think the unfortunate part is a lot of people, when they get there, are going back to work. There's this unretirement movement happening right now where 1 in 5 Americans over the age of 65 are working, and they're not going back to work in most cases because they need the money. It's because they missed the contribution and they missed the connection. And so I want to help people realize that there's a likelihood they're going to work longer than what society is telling them. And once they realize they're going to be working longer, it means they don't have to save as much right now. And if you don't have to save as much right now, that means you have more time and more money in the present that you get to spend on the people and things that are most important to you.
So where did this idea of retirement and working till you're 65 and then enjoying life really stem from? It is kind of odd when, at least right now, thinking about it, it's like that's such a weird way to kind of approach things. But this has been in we've all been on automatic mode doing it that way for so long. Where did that come from, and why is that, or was that the way to go?
Yeah, it's a fairly new idea. So it first made an appearance in 1889 in Germany. The chancellor at the time, Otto von Bismarck, was setting up the first ever social plan to help out their older citizens. And they picked the age of 70, where the age that they would start receiving benefit, because, quote, that was the age people were expected to live until, quote. So it was the age that they were supposed to die is the age they were going to start get a benefit. And they lowered that to 65. FDR, a few years later, FDR thought 65 sounded like a good number when he was setting up Social Security in 1935. And the reality is life expectancy at that time was 61. It was in the early 70s if you made it to 65. But if you were going to retire in the 1950s, you were going to get a third of your income from Social Security, a third of your income from a pension plan, and those don't really exist anymore. You only had to come up with enough money to cover a third of what you needed, and you only needed it to last for about 6 or 7 years because that's how long you were going to live. And fast forward to today, life expectancy is 78, and it's pushing 90 if you make it to 65, yet everyone still kind of views 65 as the magic number in the age without really questioning it, that they need to plan for and retire. And they're going to need to do a lot more to make that money last 25 or 30 years than they did in the 50s.
Yeah, that makes sense. How does this change our behavior with money now then? Because if you're working with an employee that has an employee match, like you want to take advantage of that. There's all these tax saving opportunities now to put things away to then enjoy later. Like it kind of makes sense on paper, but what is the reality of this? And are you basically saying we shouldn't be contributing to our retirement account at all? What is your stance?
No, I wouldn't go that far. Look, I think close to 50% of people in the United States don't have anything at all saved for retirement, and that's a separate crisis, and they need to read a different book and hear a different message. I'm really appealing to the people that have sort of subconsciously bought into this idea, and it's on autopilot, because when they met with their financial advisor or went to an online calculator, the financial advisor didn't say, do you want to retire? The financial advisor said, what age do you want to retire? And most people haven't given it a lot of thought, or they pick the age of 65 because that's what they read in an article. Or a lot of times the financial advisor will just say to them, well, why don't we just pick 65? Because that's the age that most people pick. And then they just kind of like run their life around this number. And I don't think people realize the financial flexibility they would have by planning to work longer. And I'd love, if you think it's appropriate, I'd love to share the story that I tell in my book that I made up about a guy named Tony. It's called A Tale of Two Tonys. Tony's 45 years old. Tony makes $150,000 a year, and he has $150,000 saved up for retirement. He meets with his advisor. They agree 65 is the age for him to retire. And then at the next meeting, the advisor tells him that he has to save $2,400 a month, every single month, adjusted for inflation for the next 20 years in order to stop working. And that's about 20% of what he's making. And that is a non-starter for most people. But Tony still goes home and he feels like he can't go to the gym as often. He starts skipping family dinners. They cancel the vacation because he's already behind and he has to catch up. I create this alternate reality where Tony ends up having a conversation with his wife in between these meetings. And she's like, Tony, I don't think that you're going to be happy retiring at 65. I mean, you like what you do. You like the people that you do it with. And even if you're not doing this, you have other interests, you have other hobbies. I can't imagine you're going to be happy sitting around doing nothing for 30 years. So he calls the financial advisor back and he says, let's make my retirement age 75 instead of 65. And the advisor tells him now, instead of having to save $2,400 a month, he only has to save $110 a month. It goes down by 96%. And the reason for this, I have him dying at 95 in both scenarios. In the first example, he has 10 less years of saving, 10 less years of letting that money be able to grow, and he needs the money to last for 30 years when he stops. And in the second scenario, he has 10 additional years of working, 10 additional years of saving and allowing that money to compound. And then he only needs an amount of money that will last for 20 years. And so, even if he said I'll work until I'm 70 instead of 75, the number goes down to $600 a month. It goes down by 75%. So this is a real opportunity for people to rethink how they're spending their time and their money in the short term if they agree that they probably won't be happy with a traditional retirement.
If Tony is retiring at 75 and only has to save $110, he has now hypothetically an extra $2,290 to spend each month on that gym membership to remain healthy and happy, the date nights with the wife and the vacations with the family to build memories and experiences. I mean, that's what I'm thinking about when it comes to what I want to spend my money on now. And then, of course, there's just the conversation of I could literally walk outside and get hit by a bus. And okay, there you go.
Absolutely, man. No one ever walked into my office with their hand raised saying that they knew they didn't want to retire. I would start the conversation, but I would always humor them a little bit. So I would ask a couple, what do you want to do when you retire at 65? And they would say, we want to travel the world together. And I would say, great. When was the last time you two went out on a date? And 75% of the time, they would just look at each other and not have a good answer. Or they would say, I want to spend a lot of time with my kids and grandkids, but they're not coming home for dinner very often. My favorite, maybe like they want to play golf 5 days a week, but they haven't played golf in 4 years and they don't go to the gym and they just had their hip replaced. And so I am advocating and I'm preaching a lot of what a lot of other people are preaching, which is more quality time with your kids, with your spouse, with your friends, more personal care, more fun. But what I'm doing is I'm showing people the numbers, because the elephant in the room in a lot of cases is I want to do all these things. I know I should do all these things, but how do I afford them? I think I'm helping people realize that maybe there's a little bit more time and money than they previously thought they had.
Yeah. Man, the traditional financial advisors probably love you for this. I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
They make their commissions off of people putting into these retirement accounts and stuff. And you're basically saying, no, you could put things into experiences and other things. And so where's the balance in terms of what one potentially should save? How does one calculate that if we're not using traditional retirement calculators?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have a calculator on my website that people can use to personalize their own version of A Tale of Two Tonys. I think that ultimately someone's ability, as long as you don't hate what you do, as long as it's not sucking your soul, I think that most people will want to continue to be engaged and continue to work. And as long as you're in the game, that just gives you a lot of flexibility. I have clients who are in their 70s now. Some of them are still working and some of them have completely stopped. And even though in both scenarios, they have plenty of money, I spend the majority of my time encouraging them to spend more of it. The people that still have some revenue coming in, even if it's like $100,000, just spend their money in so much more of a carefree way than the people who have completely stopped. And because they're just taking it out, they're afraid, I think, to really enjoy everything that they've saved up and everything that they've worked hard for.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's nothing else coming in. So they're kind of like, well, now every dollar really matters because that's the pot that I'm pulling from and nothing's going into it anymore. That's a really interesting thought as well. And the idea of just enjoying what you're doing. I mean, this is why when I teach business and entrepreneurship, we try to align it with a person's not necessarily total passion, but just to have some fun and excitement and enjoyment in that challenge of building that business, whether it becomes a side hustle or anything like that. So do you find that for your clients who are enjoying life the most and making the most of it, are they continuing the job that they had into those later years, or are there some of them finding other things to supplement and to kind of maybe try something new or work in a different field?
Yeah, most of them have pivoted to something else. And so I think that there are a lot of different ways you can approach this. If you have a job that you love, maybe what you end up doing is you scale back the time that you're spending on it. You are taking summers off or Fridays off, or maybe you'll work for a year or two and go really hard and then take a sabbatical and take some time to reflect. I've got a client that was the CEO of a big utility company in DC who ended up after he retired from that company, he ended up opening up a consulting practice, and he had all these clients and all these relationships that he could reach out to and provide his wisdom and skills to. And I think that because especially we don't have as many younger workers coming up to replace the jobs of the older workers, and you throw in AI on top of that, there's an opportunity here for people that have certain skills and certain abilities to be able to do things on their terms. You know, if you're willing and able to contribute, a lot of these organizations, a lot of these companies will be happy to have you however they can get you. If that means like just Wednesdays, if that means like you're never going to leave your house and it's going to be all over Zoom, or it's going to just be a couple months a year, I think that you have an opportunity, as long as you continue to learn and develop skills, to kind of set things up the way that makes sense for you.
That's great. I had a experience with a older couple. I met them on a vacation, and they were retired at around 68, 69 years old. But what was kind of sad about the story is that they had been successful in life. They retired, and they just kind of like, we're just going to veg out. We worked so hard in our life, so we're just going to sit around and enjoy life and watch TV and, you know, maybe do a few things here and there. But they told me they felt like they got old really fast when they stopped working. Like things just accelerated very quickly. Where I've met other people who are much older who are continuing to work, who feel like they're young again, or they've got this energy about them. And I've heard this before, where like your brain is like a muscle, right? If you're not really using it, it's just like, well, why am I still here kind of thing. And then in worst case scenarios, there's like dementia and other things that can kind of come about if you're not using it. Do you find that there's also those sort of byproduct benefits of continuing to work and generate revenue at those older ages?
For sure. You know, it's very bad for your health to stop having a purpose. And there's a study done about 10 years ago by a woman named Barbara Fredrickson out of Chapel Hill, and she divided people into two groups. Group one were people that were prioritizing personal happiness. They were waking up every morning solving for how can I be happier. Group number two had a bigger purpose, a bigger reason for being here than just kind of making themselves happy. And they hooked them all up to brain and heart monitors and did a bunch of testing on them. And the first group, their bodies had the same response that our bodies have when they deal with chronic adversity. So like the loss of a loved one or the loss of a job, their inflammation went sky high, their immunity went down. They were much more likely to get sick and or pass away. Whereas the second group, it was just the opposite. Their inflammation was low, their immunity was higher. They were not getting sick as often, and they were happier. So aside from kind of maintaining a purpose and a bigger picture reason for being here. And I don't think it has to be tied to your job, but having something that is exciting you and motivating you beyond yourself is going to keep you around longer. And I also think that the key to being happy is to not directly pursue happiness, but rather to think about how you can make a difference. And then happiness is a natural byproduct of that.
Yeah. Gosh, amen to that for sure. Hey there, quick pause here because I have to tell you about a tool that completely transformed the podcast workflow, Riverside. I get it. I used to juggle multiple platforms just to record one podcast episode, and it was exhausting. Zoom for recording, Audacity for editing, and then a bunch of different apps just to create clips and social posts. It's clunky and super time-consuming. And that's where Riverside has massively helped. I can do it all in one place: recording, editing, repurposing, one platform, one streamlined flow. I just log in, record my guests no matter where they are in the world. And just like that, studio quality audio and high resolution video. And get this, even if your Wi-Fi glitches, Riverside records locally on your device, so everything sounds and looks crystal clear. But here's my favorite feature of all: Riverside's Co-Creator. This is where AI really shines. It's like having a team spinning my recordings into short clips, social media posts, thumbnails, newsletters, blogs, and more. Co-Creator knows every platform and creates optimized content for each one. No extra editing, just next level repurposing to reach people wherever they are online. So if you're looking to level up your production quality and simplify your workflow, go to smartpassiveincome.com/Riverside and use code SMART to get 1 month free on the Pro plan. That's smartpassiveincome.com/Riverside, promo code SMART. It's built by creators for creators, and I think you're going to love it. Legal questions are an integral part of running your own business. Is this contract or agreement sound? If a client doesn't pay, what do I do? Are my taxes set up properly? Instead of trying to find your own answers online, imagine having real experienced lawyers ready to answer all of your business legal questions without the sticker shock. That's what you get with Legal Shield's monthly small business plans. Legal Shield gives you access to designated law firms in your state to help with contract reviews, trademarks, collection letters, business formation guidance, and even help navigating IRS audits. As a member, you can schedule consultations and get support from a vetted law firm who will speak in a way you understand, respect your time, and care about the outcome. Plus, Legal Shield's knowledgeable law firms can write letters or make phone calls on your behalf to protect your hard-earned revenue, all for a fraction of the price of hiring a lawyer on your own. Go to LegalShield.com/SPI or call 833-570-9980 to learn more and get big business legal support without a big business budget. That's LegalShield.com/SPI. So I know your book was written for the purpose of amplifying this message, and I think it's getting out there. I mean, the reviews, even on your book, plenty are talking about how finally people are starting to wake up to this, which is nice. And so I know that people who might be a little bit older who are reading this book are getting sort of a wake-up call and maybe kind of a just-in-time kind of call for that and adjusting. How relevant is the book and your message to those who are a little bit younger now, maybe millennial or even younger? And what decisions should we be making when it comes to our finances and where to put money? I mean, I think especially for those who maybe have a business or a side hustle and they're making some revenue, oftentimes that extra revenue just goes into a retirement account.
Yeah.
Where are you suggesting maybe that could be better allocated?
Yeah, some of the older people reading my book, it's quite triggering for them. I think that I kind of view myself in the regret minimization business a little bit with this book, where our society expects us to work our hardest and have our best income producing years during the time when our kids need us and want us the most. I share a stat in my book that Tim Urban shared on his blog, Wait But Why, that shows where when your kid goes off to college, you've already spent 93% of the time that you're going to spend with them over the course of your life. And then the inverse of that is also true, where if you have adult parents who are living in a different state, how many more times are you going to see them based on how often you see them right now? And my kids are 16 and 13. I have 2.5 and 4.5 years left respectively with them. And I'm solving for that. I sold my practice in 2019 and I'm not independently wealthy. It's not like I never have to work again, but I have some runway. But more importantly, I have the 5-year from now version of me sponsoring my current lifestyle. It's almost like I know that version of me is writing a bigger check in the future that's funding my ability to really lean into spending meaningful and quality time with my kids right now. And so while maybe people that are in their 60s will read my book, and there's certainly some things they can get out of it, I'm writing this book for the people that are in their 30s and 40s that have kids at home, that are not paying enough attention to their significant other, that are not taking care of themselves. I'm trying to reach them so that they hopefully have less regrets when they get to the age of 60 or 65 than maybe if they wouldn't have come across what I had to share. And then I'll also say on top of that, just to finish answering your question, I think that like the majority of the great things that I have in my life right now, including the flexibility to design my life the way that I have, is directly correlated with the fact that I was working 80 hours a week in my 20s and early 30s. And so I'm not sure if there's anyone that maybe should not heed my advice, for this more of a balanced, integrated approach to living. It's people that are really just kind of getting going, that don't have the kids yet, that are not married yet, that can really just kind of build up their skills and their bank accounts to give them more flexibility in the future.
Yeah. I mean, it's about living life now, not working now to live later. And especially with the kids. I mean, my kids are about the same age as yours, 15 and 13, and there are only so many summers we have left with them to enjoy. So we're trying to maximize it. And this is why, we do spend a little bit more money on the vacations and the experiences where, of course, we could save that for later. But who knows what later is going to be and how much time we're going to have, or if they're going to have families and just not have the availability. We have the availability with them right now. So let's take advantage of it. What are some of the objections that people experience or you've heard from maybe your clients or even readers who hear this and they're just like, no, this is not the right way to go about it? Maybe they're too ingrained with the old model, or what maybe objections or maybe myths are they thinking about?
I'm not trying to save everyone. I think that a lot of the people that reject what I have to share, it's usually tied to them planting their flag to justify the choices that they've made up until now. I was recently having a conversation with someone who was refuting a lot of what I had to say, and she's getting ready to retire in 2 years, and her son is 17. And so again, I think that there are some people that hear this and in order for them to embrace what I am sharing, there would have to be a certain level of admission that maybe they didn't do things the way that they could have or should have done it in the future, but I think to your point, like earlier about maybe you won't be around tomorrow. Like some people say, well, what if you get disabled and what if something happens and you can no longer work? Well, I'll even feel better about all the time that I spent with my kids and the travel I did and the concerts that I went to if I, God forbid, find myself in that type of a situation. So I also think there's a lot of people that just really don't like what they do. When I started writing the book, I was using language like find a job that you love. And I backed off that a little bit. And I started using language like find something that you don't hate, because I really don't feel like everyone has to find their purpose and it has to be what they do for the rest of their lives. I think that that's ideal and that can be great if it happens. But I also think that maybe someone's purpose is they're the ones that plan all of the family vacations or the neighborhood parties or the annual trips with their longtime friends, and having a job that you enjoy somewhat, that the people are enjoyable and it keeps you active and interested and growing can fund a lot of that as well.
Yeah. I love that reframe. Don't just try to find that job that you're passionate about. That's a hard thing to do because many of us are multi-passionate or just don't know who we are yet as we are growing up, especially in trying to find ourselves. But find a job that you don't hate. That is great, because a lot of us, I know, and I remember getting close to that point where I was hating my job because it was 60, 70-hour weeks as an architect. And I was trying to find the pockets of it that I did love, which is what kept me going. But for the person who maybe listened to that and is triggered because they are in a job that they absolutely despise, hate waking up for, how would you recommend they then go about discovering a job that they don't hate?
Yeah, so I think definitely don't leave your job right away, especially if it's funding your ability to maintain your rent and pay your bills. But I think there's an opportunity, and you know this better than most people, to find side gigs, to explore and experiment with other sources of revenue in addition to your current job. So are you familiar with the story Adam Grant shared about him being approached by the founders of Warby Parker to invest in their company?
No.
I think it's from Originals, and he was teaching a couple of these kids, and they came to him to invest in the very first round they were doing, and they were all in school. And Adam's like, I'm not going to invest my money with you all because you're not really focused on building this business yet. And they came back to him a year later after they graduated. Only one of the three was going to be working full-time at Warby Parker, and the other two got actual jobs at consulting and I think investment firms. And he's like, I'm not going to, if you aren't all in, then I'm not going to give you my money. And then he's like, of course, that's the worst financial decision that I ever made. And it led him to digging up some research that showed two groups of entrepreneurs. The first group were folks who left their job, left a source of income to go all in on a new venture. And the second group maintained the source of income that they had while starting this new venture. And the second group was significantly more likely to succeed with their business. And the conclusion that Adam Grant drew from this was, even though entrepreneurs are often associated with being great risk takers, are actually really great risk mitigators. And by having some steady revenue coming in while you're starting your new thing can allow you to build that in more of a pure way and more of an enjoyable way, and in a way where you're not working with people that aren't a good fit, making exceptions for clients. And so I think that there's an opportunity to explore something like that.
That's a really interesting thought, because we have a lot of students in our community who do work a 9-to-5 job, but they're working on a side hustle, and they've found success. And I think a lot of that is a result of not having the stress of that risk that you take by going all in, where almost every decision is life or death at that point, which can make it tough to make a decision. And then you start to see people procrastinate or kind of not publish the thing because they're worried about it being perfect, because every part of it matters, versus, well, I'm going to try this, but I have a escape route or plan B just in case. And it's just really interesting that you call that out, because we often feel like in order to make it work, we have to go all in on it. And it's either all in or nothing. And so that's where people get into trouble. And I remember Chip and Dan Heath wrote a book called Decisive, how we as humans just have this binary thinking of things. It's either a yes or a no, or all in or all out. But there's a lot of happy mediums in there that we want to explore. And that's where I love that you brought up the idea of that side hustle, of that thing. And so that can happen as an offshoot of the work that you're already doing, or it could be something that you have once had in your life that you want to go back to, like maybe singing and teaching singing lessons or whatever it might be. I think the most important thing is to just try that and to try to have fun and just kind of experiment and explore. And again, because you have your job that you're already doing, there's less risk, and therefore you could do it for the good fun part of it also, not just for, well, I got to make this work, and then you end up maybe succeeding in a business that you don't even really enjoy.
For sure. I did this in 2010. I had about 300 wealth management clients, and I was looking around at a lot of the advisors that were 10, 15 years my senior, and they all had like 2,000 clients and didn't really love working with the majority of them. And I was starting to sense that. I got really good at growing in the early years, but I ended up with a lot of clients who weren't taking my advice or who were questioning everything, and just wasn't an enjoyable experience for me. And so I, like the good old 80-20 rule, I went down to 75 clients from 300. And then my wife and I started a community called Cadre, which we still lead today for CEOs and entrepreneurs. And we've always done a really nice job curating that. And I never had a great answer for why the curation was so good until one day I blurted out, the revenue that I generate from my wealth management business pays my bills and allows me to be really picky about who we bring in to the community. And then it works the other way as well. And so one of the really nice ancillary benefits that I found out pretty quickly with having two businesses going side by side at the same time is that I could be more selective and more choosy and more demanding of the people that I was working with in a way that I'm not sure that I would have the courage or the confidence to do if I just maintained one thing.
That is so correct. And for example, I'm doing a lot of stuff in the Pokemon space right now, and I've built that into its own business, and the YouTube channel's exploded to a couple million subscribers. And, you know, I have a lot of people come my way throwing money at this brand because it reaches so many people. And I could say no to all of them. And I get to work with who I want to work with because I have SPI and all these other things that are happening in the background as well, you know, that is supporting me revenue-wise, where, you know, a lot of people recently asked me, like, Pat, how did you mentally approach the Pokemon stuff to make it so successful? And I said, I just did it because I wanted to have fun, not because I wanted to turn it into a business. And that's why it turned into a successful business.
Amazing. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned, whether that business you have now is a 9-to-5 or a current more automated business that you have that you want to work on and have other itches that you want to scratch. And, you know, as long as you kind of contain that curiosity and maybe work on one additional new thing at a time, you can explore and find new avenues. What are some of the other obstacles that people have when it comes to their future planning that may be red flags or things to look out for?
We can get into some of the specifics from a financial planning perspective if you want. I will say that you had brought this up earlier. 401k plans became all the rage, and I would argue are still all the rage, mainly because of this idea that you get to put away money right now while you are working at your current tax rate. And when you pull the money out, since you're not going to be working, you're likely going to be in a lower tax rate. So the arbitrage works in your favor by doing that. Well, once somebody realizes that there's a chance they're going to be working into their 70s or maybe even longer, then maybe it doesn't check out. And maybe it's not the no-brainer choice that we think it is right now, because maybe you're going to be making even more money. And maybe once you throw in the fact that you are going to be required to start pulling money out of these accounts when you're 70 and a half and pay taxes on them, that you could potentially be in a higher tax bracket. And so I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying that most people, when I meet them, they have the majority of their savings for retirement saved in accounts that are subject to income taxes on the way out. And they're not utilizing things like Roth IRAs or standard brokerage accounts that will ultimately be taxed differently. And so I'm always a big fan of preaching the importance of diversifying how your money's ultimately going to be taxed, the same way that we would preach the importance of diversifying your assets between different asset classes. Because, you know, let's say you get to 75 and, you know, tax rates are right now historically low. I mean, they're quite low. They could end up being a lot higher 20 or 30 years from now. If you have money in accounts that are tax-free when you pull the money out, you have a lot more flexibility with the way you get to use and spend your money than if you have the majority of it in accounts that are subject to income taxes. You're sort of at the whim of whatever the government decides at the time.
That makes sense. And I mean, you had mentioned it, and I was going to bring it up, but the Roth, which it gets taxed on the way in. So that's of benefit so that by the time it grows, and then, you still want your money working for you, right? We're not saying keep everything in savings. We're saying let's put it into different places that are based on the future that we want, and also have the ability to have that life that you want now too, not just wait till later. So the Roth is great, and brokerage accounts, and thankfully I've gotten into those as well. So it's still important to think about the money coming in and not just spend it all. We need to kind of smartly. Do you find that there's clients who maybe get eyes wide open when you tell them about this, and they're like, oh, I don't need to save for retirement. I can just spend everything now?
Yeah, we don't want to do that, but I do think that there are other things that you might want to consider saving for that you previously hadn't considered. So you mentioned earlier 18 summers, which a lot of us have heard that. My friends Jim and Jamie Shields kind of talked about that a little bit and wrote a book about it. But what I believe and what I feel is like, if we do those 18 summers really well, then we're going to get a lot more than just 18 summers. And my North Star in life is that I want to make choices right now that are going to increase the likelihood that my kids are going to want to spend more time with me when they're adults. And I do see certain scenarios where my kids are at different parts of the country and they're working different jobs, and maybe they married someone, maybe there's some tension in our family at a given time for whatever reason. And I think that our ability to be able to say, hey, we're planning this amazing trip, and maybe we do it every year, and it's so seductive and it seems so amazing that they're going to just drop whatever they're doing and show up to spend time with the family. And so I think that's something where, it's not something that a lot of people are thinking about saving for, or something that they're thinking that they're going to spend their money on if they keep working. But I think for people like you and me, like, our ability to plan these amazing trips for like our kids and our grandkids is a way to get our families together for epic experiences, every single year, is a pretty cool way to think about how we're going to use our money.
I'd rather have that than a whole load of money for me to do what when I turn 65. I would just do the same things I'd probably be doing. I would just have more money. Like what else? It doesn't unlock anything for me to have a whole load of retirement money now available at 65, in my opinion. That's what I've always thought.
The last chapter of my book is called Investing in You. And I essentially say, hopefully by now, I've convinced you there's a good chance maybe you're going to work longer than what you previously thought. And here are some of the ways I would think about investing that money in a non-traditional way, but in a way that could ultimately lead to more money for you. And I talk about everything from how I've spent $250,000 on couples therapy for my wife and I over the past 20 years. And most of that time is spent talking about how to deal with people that aren't in therapy but should be. But it's allowed us to carve out an ability to communicate really effectively. And so I've stopped short of putting that into a calculator to see what it'd be worth right now if I would have been saving that money. But here I am at 48, just in an amazing place with the relationship that I have with my wife, and creating from that place of being clear and feeling loved and feeling secure in that relationship. And I think that ultimately, the best person for anyone to be getting advice from is the best and most optimized version of themselves. And I think a lot of people are just a far cry. The person that's maybe working the job that they don't like, that's feeling the stress, that's feeling the anxiety, maybe they hear what I'm saying and they realize they can take a few months off to catch their breath. They can start sleeping better. They can start going to the gym more. They can start investing more time with their kids. And then this version of them that's showing up, even though they might be spending less time at the quote unquote office, they're a different person showing up with different ideas, different creativity, different energy that a lot of times, and the data supports this, can lead to them making more money.
Yeah, absolutely. Derek, this has been eye-opening, I'm sure, for so many listeners. And it's going to be something that I feel many people listening to this may bring to their spouse and their partners and say, hey, let's listen to this together so that we can have these honest discussions about what we're doing with our money and where we want to go and what could we do now. It's very similar to, I heard a buddy of mine took an Uber to an airport recently, and he was telling me this story after we got together, and he said he likes asking questions about people's dreams and asked the Uber driver what he wanted to do. And he said he really wished he could just spend more time with his kids. And that's why he was working, to spend more time with his kids. Anyway, just long story short, the thing he wanted to do, he already had the ability to do it. He was just in automation mode. And it kind of brought the Uber driver to tears because he had felt like he was wasting all this time when he could have already done this stuff where he thought he had to have all this money to be able to do it. There were things that they could do that cost no money that they could do now to still bond and all that stuff. Anyway, just this unautomation component is sort of a theme of my book, Lean Learning, a theme with yours as well. Like, let's zoom out a little bit and really start thinking about where we're at and what we want to do. And I appreciate you really going head on with something that's sort of been ingrained in us, which is retirement, and kind of thinking about that very differently. Derek, where can people go to grab your book, and where might you recommend they go to see more of you?
Yeah, my website, derekcoburn.com, is a great place. It'll have links for where you can buy the book. And I'm still writing a lot. I don't know about you, but I had this period where after I turned in my final manuscript, I started getting more ideas and different ideas. And I had this week where I was like sad because I didn't include them in my book. And a few of my friends, like I think you have some mutual friends like Marcus Sheridan and Joey Coleman, they gave me a pep talk and said, this is going to continue to happen. So I've been writing and adding to it. And I would just love to find people that the message is resonating with and continue to share with them and hopefully put them in a position where they can show up more present right now to make an impact and live the life that they want to live right now.
Amen to that. Thank you, Derek. Derek Coburn, COBURN.com. Go get the book. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Pat. This was great.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Derek Coburn, author of Let's Retire Retirement. He also has a co-author, Sarah Stitbitz, who is on that book as well. And she wasn't able to join us today, but incredible. Hopefully this is inspiring and gives you some thoughts. And like I said in the episode, something that you and your partner should listen to and re-listen to have these serious discussions about, well, what is important now and what is important later? And are you putting resources into things that can help you enjoy life today? So thank you so much to Derek. Thank you for listening all the way through. I hope this was an eye-opener for you, because even in the conversation itself, it was an eye-opener for me. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers. I've been using ChatGPT and Claude since day one, but there's one AI tool I now use more than both of them combined. Let me paint a picture for you. Last week, I wanted to create a video essay about my book, but I'd never made one before. Normally, I'd spend hours watching tutorials, taking notes, and then trying to apply what I learned. But with Poppy AI, I did something different. I found 5 YouTube videos teaching video essay structure, dropped them into a visual canvas along with my book and some sample newsletters. Then I connected everything to an AI chat, and in minutes, I had a complete video essay outline with my voice, my examples, and even specific visual suggestions with timestamps. And here's why this works. Instead of linear conversations that lose context, Poppy lets you visually organize your inputs. I can see exactly what the AI knows about my style and add or remove sources as needed. I've used it to turn podcast episodes into newsletters, create scripts from book chapters, and research topics by feeding in multiple sources simultaneously, and the results speak for themselves. Content that actually sounds like me, not some generic AI robot. So if you're ready to stop fighting with AI and start collaborating, head to smartpassiveincome.com/Poppy, Poppy, and use code SPI for $25 off your subscription. Smartpassiveincome.com/Poppy, use code SPI. This one is a game changer. All right, I need to tell you something, because although you're listening to just an audio podcast right now, guess which format or medium is best for the most brand exposure, for the most accelerated growth right now? Yep, you got it. Yes, it is YouTube, of course. And YouTube and video is exactly where a lot of businesses are getting started, getting a lot of top-of-funnel exposure for what it is that they're doing and more leads into their business. And of course, email, all those things matter, especially when it comes from video. So I want to teach you what's working and what's not on YouTube right now. And if I were starting a YouTube channel today, well, I want to teach you exactly what I would do. And this is an upcoming webinar and free live event that I'd love for you to attend. All you need to do is go to smartpassiveincome.com/YouTube-webinar. Again, smartpassiveincome.com/YouTube-webinar. You can register, and for 1 hour, I'm going to uncover what is working and what's not. And trust me, I've got creds for this, because I recently started a couple of YouTube channels that have grown to about 2 million subscribers each. But the cool thing about this is you don't need 1 million subscribers in order for YouTube to work for you. You just need to know what's working and how to turn that into business and revenue. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Again, all you have to do is register right now for free at smartpassiveincome.com/YouTube-webinar. Pause this audio. Go there now. Again, smartpassiveincome.com/YouTube-webinar. Be sure to register, and you'll also get your questions answered there too. Looking forward to seeing you there.